This is how them people be getting their videos like this.
Completely disable the radar on the aircraft when they're trying to do it. The only way we can see it is passively, which is how they get that image. So I think that's a concern on what are these doing, not only how they operate, but their capabilities inside.
Done this in ages.
And how should we think about four craft moving in a very clear formation, equidistant from one another, in a diamond? In all of the phenomenon, perhaps, Mr. Grave, that you've analyzed, have we ever seen multiple craft in a
I think they're trying to distract from
I have one particular
sounds
case, and
again.
that was during the gimbal incident. The recording on the AT FLIR system shows a single object that rotates. You hear the pilots refer to a fleet of objects that is not visible on the FLIR system, and that was something that I witnessed during the debrief as part of the radar data on the situational awareness page. I would like to add, whoever Congressman, there's a small bit of anger, I would say. I would feel as those pilots are still
UFO
facing that difficulty in covering this topic, and they don't have the tools to be able to mitigate this issue. It just goes to show how
Great
serious this
deception
is
is
and why
coming,
this
man.
is such an important issue for our pilots and for our nation.
It was stated explicitly to me by these test pilots that if you have a UAP experience, the best thing you can do for your career is forget it and not tell anyone. Because any type of reporting, either above the surface or below the surface, does have a perceived consequence to these people, and that is a culture we must change if we want to get to the truth. Mr. Chairman, I would observe that perhaps as we move forward from this hearing, there are some obvious next steps. Every person watching this knows that we need to meet with Mr. Brush in a secure, compartmentalized facility so that we can get fulsome answers that do not put him in jeopardy and that give us the information we need. Second, I would suggest that the radar images that were collected of this formation of craft out of Eglin Air Force Base, and specifically the actual image taken by the actual flight crew that we can actually validate, be provided to the committee, subpoenaed if necessary, so that we're able to track how to get this type of reporting and analysis done in a more fulsome way. That would be my recommendation, humbly, as a guest here of the Fine Oversight Committee. I yield back.
Ms. Mace?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to our witnesses who are testifying today. I want to thank each of you for being here to discuss a topic of grave importance to our national security. Earlier this year, Chinese spy balloon was shot down off the coast of my home state of South Carolina. Since the Roswell incident in 1947, many Americans have wondered about the dangers of unknown objects crisscrossing our skies. Whether these are UAPs or weather phenomena, advanced technology from American allied or enemy forces, or something more out of this world. So my first question, I have several questions, and you can just be quick on these first two. I'm going to ask each of you the same question, and then I'll get to each of you individually. The first one, when you reported your experiences with a UAP, did any of you face any repercussions with your superiors, yes or no?
No.
No. I've actually never seen anything personally, believe it or not. So.
All right. And then do you believe there's an active disinformation campaign within our government to deny existence of UAPs, yes or no?
I don't have an answer to that.
As previously stated publicly, yes. I think previously with like Project Blue Book, yes, but currently I don't speak for the United States government.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions for Mr. Graves.
Brought up Project
what percentage of
Blue
UAP sightings in your belief go unreported by our pilots?
This is an approximation based off of my personal experience speaking with a number of pilots, but I would estimate we're somewhere near 5% reporting perhaps.
So like 95% basically don't report seeing UAPs.
That's just my personal estimate.
In the incident off Virginia Beach, do you believe the Navy took the danger to your aircraft seriously after it was reported?
Absolutely.
A few questions for Mr. Favor. As an expert naval aviator, have you ever seen an object that looked and moved like the Tic Tac UAP?
No.
Did the Tic Tac UAP move in such a way that defied the laws of physics?
The way we understand them, yes.
Many dismiss UAP reports as classified weapons testing by our own government, but in your experience as a pilot, does our government typically test advanced weapon systems right next to multi-million-dollar jets without informing our pilots?
No, we have test ranges for that.
Fake invasion.
It took over 15 years for your encounter with the Tic Tac to be declassified. Do you feel there was a good reason to prevent lawmakers from having access to this footage?
No, I just think it was ignored when it happened, and it just sat somewhere in a file, never got reported.
It happens a lot up here. Shocker. Mr. Grush, a couple of questions for you too, sir, this morning. What percentage of UAPs do you feel are adequately investigated by the U.S. government? Of the 5% that are reported.
I can only speak for my personal leadership over at NGA. I tried to look at every report that came through that I could triage. So.
Do you believe that officials at the highest levels of our national security apparatus have unlawfully withheld information from Congress and subverted our oversight authority?
There are certain elected leaders that had more information that I'm not sure what they've shared with certain gang of 8 members or et cetera, but certainly I would not be surprised.
Okay. You stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in a public setting.
Well, you just basically said yes.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Or they running an experiment.
Were they, I guess,
that's what
human or non-human
They're
biologics?
running an experiment.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you and Skip about.
Okay, so, and you may or may not be able to answer my last question, and maybe we get into a skiff at the next hearing that we have, but who in the government, either what agency, sub-agency, what contractors, who should be called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in a public setting or even in a private setting? And you probably can't name names, but what agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call in to get these questions answered, whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you after the hearing.
Super, thank you, and I yield back.
He said a specific cooperative and hostile
I
list
have Mr. Lang is here.
of people who can
Yeah.
basically say that this is happening.
Aparato.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank
So, like a thing.
all of the witnesses for being here
Like-
today
Aparato.
to discuss this very unique topic. And I'd like to jump right into my questions if you don't mind. Commander Fravor, can you briefly describe your background?
Yeah, I was an enlisted Marine, Naval Academy graduate, Navy, flew for 18 years, got a master's from the University of Houston, and I've worked in the private sector for the last, what now, 19, 16 years,
Yeah, he
17
mad
years.
low. My
I
fan
do a lot
probably
of
louder than
defense
him.
work.
So really gold-plated credentials.
I'm not-
Commander Fravor, we have all seen the floating Tic Tac video that you engaged with on November 14th, 2004. Can you briefly talk about why you were off the coast of San Diego that day?
Floating tick.
Yeah, we were at a workup with all the battle groups, so we integrate the ships with the carrier, the air wing with the carrier, and we start working. So we were doing an air-to-air defense to hone not only our skills, but those of the USS Princeton when they had been tracking them for 2 weeks. The problem was that there was never manned aircraft airborne when they were tracking them, and this was the first day, and unfortunately, we were the ones airborne and went and saw it.
Try not
Do
to
you remember
move
the weather that day?
so
Or was it
much.
cloudy or windy or anything out of the
It's
ordinary on the
dirty there,
Pacific
ain't
coast?
It was actually, if you're familiar with San
I have
Diego, it was
a,
a perfect
folder.
day, light winds, no white caps,
just leave it
clear
like that.
skies, not a
This-
cloud.
This is
For
exactly the
flying,
way I was
it was
recording.
the best.
Alright.
Now, is it true that you saw, in your words, a 40-foot flying Tic-Tac shaped object?
That's correct. Or for some people that can't know what a Tic Tac is, it's a giant flying propane tank.
Did this object come up on radar or interfere with your radar or the USS Princeton?
The Princeton tracked it, the Nimitz tracked it, the E2 tracked it. We never saw it on our radars. Our fire control radars never picked it up. The other airplane that took the video did get it on a radar. As soon as it tried to lock it jammed the radar, spit the lock, and he's rapidly switched over to the targeting pod, which you can do in the F-18.
From what you saw that day and what you've seen on video, did you see any source of propulsion from the flying object, including on any potential thermal scans from your aircraft?
No, there's none. There's no IR plume coming out. And Chad, who took the video, went through all the EO, which is black and white TV, and the IR modes, and there's no visual signs of propulsion. It's just sitting in space at 20,000 feet.
In your career, have you ever seen a propulsion system that creates no thermal exhaust?
No.
Can you describe how the aircraft maneuvered?
Abruptly, very determinate. It knew exactly what it was doing. It was aware of our presence. And it had acceleration rates. I mean, it went from 0 to matching our speed in no time at all.
Now, if the fastest plane on Earth was trying to do these maneuvers that you saw, would it be capable of doing that?
No, not even close.
And just to confirm, this object had no wings, correct?
No wings.
Now, was the aircraft that you were flying, was it armed?
No, never felt threatened at all.
If the aircraft was armed, you believe that your aircraft
Come
or
on,
any
secret
aircraft in
invasion.
possession of the United States could have shot the Tic Tac down?
Straight out of a comic book, man.
I'd say no. Just on the performance, it would just left in a split second.
It looks like that we have a problem here that needs further investigation.
Yes.
In your belief, is this flying Tic Tac? I mean, is it capable of being the product of any other nation on the Earth?
No, I actually said, like I said earlier, I think it defies current material science and the ability to develop that much propulsion. And I know there's been some physicists that have done calculations, which is beyond anything that we have.
Well, either the United States has an adversary here in this world that we don't know, or we really have some serious investigations to do. I really appreciate you being here. Is there anything else about the November 14th, 2004 incident that you think is important for this committee to know that you haven't been asked here today?
No, it's been said it's probably the most credible UFO sighting in history based on all the sensors that were tracking it, and then for us to get visual and to go against the naysayers that it's something on the screen or whatever. I mean, there's 4 sets of human eyeballs. We're all very credible. Of the 6 of us that were involved in the thing, including the video, every one of us is going to do 20 plus years in the military in very responsible positions. So I would say the world needs to know that. It's not a joke.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today for all of you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Douglas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here and the courage it took to come forward and again, the sacrifice that each of you have made. I serve on the National Security Subcommittee for the Financial Services Committee, so I really want to stay in the national security lane, if I may. So when we think about traditional adversaries and both us towards them and them towards us, we probe their capabilities. We look for weaknesses, and we collect that data, that reconnaissance for in the event we need it in the future. For each of you, yes or no question, based off of your own experience or the data that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs could be essentially collecting reconnaissance information, Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Grush?
Fair assessment.
Mr. Frager?
Very possible.
Again, in the national security vein, is it possible that these UAPs would be probing our capabilities? Yes or no, Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Brush?
Yes,
Frager?
definitely.
Is it possible that these UAPs are testing for vulnerabilities in our current systems?
Yes.
Credo
Yes.
Mufar, man.
Possible.
Dr. York.
Do you feel,
Dr. York,
based off of
yeah.
your experience and the information that you've been privy to, that these UAPs
That's why we're not
provide
surprised.
an existential threat to the national security of the United States? Mr. Graves?
Potentially.
Yes, sir, potentially.
Same answer, potentially. I'd say definitely, potentially.
Mr. Graves and Fravor, in the event that your encounters had become hostile, would you have had the capability to defend yourself, your crew, your aircraft?
Absolutely not. Sir.
No.
Is Based off of the information that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs are interested in our nuclear technology and capabilities?
Yes.
By external observation, sure, that could be a fair assessment, yeah.
Yes.
Is there any indication that the Department of Energy is involved in UAP data collection and housing?
I don't have an answer.
I can't confirm or deny that in public setting.
And could you do it in a secure setting?
Yes.
Mr. Craig.
No, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm the last member to go, but there clearly is a threat to the national security of the United States of America. As members of Congress, we have a responsibility
This is crazy,
to maintain oversight and be aware of
We've been
these
telling
activities
people all the stuff they was
so
going to
that,
be doing, and
if
they're doing
appropriate, we take
everything.
action. I would encourage the chairman to demand that we have any and all, but in particular Mr. Grush, talk to us in a skiff. And if that access is denied, I will personally volunteer to initiate the Holman Rule against any personnel or any program or any agency that denies access to Congress. Mr. Chairman, with that, I will yield the remainder of my time to my fellow colleague from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Earls. Great questions, brother. Mr. Grush, I might have asked this before, but I want to make sure. Do you have any personal knowledge of someone who's possibly been injured working on legacy UAP reverse engineering?
Yes.
Okay. How were they injured? Is it something like a radioactive type situation or something we didn't understand? I've heard people talk about Havana syndrome type incidences. What was your recollection of that?
I can't get into specifics, but you could imagine assessing an unknown unknown. There's a lot of potentialities you can't fully prepare for.
How do you think we ought to handle UAP whistleblower complaints like yours in the future?
Yeah, there was some issue with mine. So, PPD 19 process, it goes to the Intel committees, either through PPD 19 or ICD 120. There's not a good way for the Intelligence Community Inspector General to provide that to other committees. And I asked my information to be sent to the House and Senate Armed Services Committee because there are Title X equities at play, but there was no smooth process to do so. Yeah.
That's a trash can. Are you aware of any individuals that are participating in reverse engineering programs for non-terrestrial craft?
Personally, yes.
You know any that would be willing to
Here,
testify
yo.
for
Wow.
protections for them?
Certainly closed door and assurances that breaking their NDA, they're not going to get administratively
Well, that'd be
punished.
over.
So, yeah.
I yield. Sure.
Thank you. We're going to do something a little bit out of the ordinary here. We're going to give 3 people a chance, an additional 3 minutes. So, Mr. Burchett, do you want to keep going?
Why don't you come back to me, Mr. Chairman? Miss Luna, is she on that list?
Sure.
Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record an article by News Nation, and it follows Mr. Grush's full interview for the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Grush, why is it that you refer to the phenomenon as non-human intelligence? Why deviate from the basis of extraterrestrial life?
I think the phenomenon is very complex, and I like to leave an open mind analytically to
Because it's
specific
not
origin.
necessarily
When you say
aliens. That's what I'm
specific
saying,
origin,
bro.
are you referring to
Extra
elaborate on that
dimensional
specifically?
beings.
If it's a
Beings.
traditional extraterrestrial origin or something else that we don't quite understand from either a biological or astrophysics perspective, just like to keep an open mind on what it could be. Yeah.
Okay, and referring to your News Nation interview, you had referenced specific treaties between governments. Article 3 of the Nuclear Arms Treaty with Russia identifies UAPs. It specifically mentions them. To your knowledge, are there safety measures in place with foreign governments or other superpowers to avoid an escalatory situation in the event that a UAP malevolent event occurs?
Yeah, you're referring to actual public treaty in the UN Register. It's funny you mention that. Yeah, the Agreement on Measures to Reduce the Risk of Outbreak of Nuclear War signed in 1971. Unclassified treaty publicly available. And if you cite the George Washington University National Security Archives, you will find the declassified in 2013 specific provisions in the specific red line flash message traffic with the specific codes pursuant to Article 3 and Article, also Situation 2, which is in the previously classified NSA archive. What I would recommend, and I tried to get access, but I got a wall of silence at the White House, was those specific incidents when those message traffic was used. I think some scholarship on that would open the door to further investigation using those publicly available information.
Thank you. And then my last question with 51 seconds remaining. You mentioned white collar crimes potentially being taking place in regards to a cover-up. Can you please elaborate?
I have concerns based on the interviews I conducted under my official duties of potential violations of the Federal Acquisition Regulations, the FAR.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I yield the remainder of my time.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Raskin for 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I thank the witnesses for their endurance and service today. Mr. Fravor, you've described your episode in detail now, and you call it the most credible UFO sighting in history. But I wonder,
this is really happening, bro.
Was this the
is
first
really
time
in
that you
our dimension
encountered
right now.
a UFO or a UAP in 2004?
Yes.
And what was your general
This guy's just like, I'm ready. I'm just ready to go.
perspective
Like,
on
I'm excited. too, for
UFO
real.
discussion before that happened?
I never felt that we were alone with all the planets out there, but God wasn't a UFO person. I wasn't watching History Channel and roof of it and all that.
And,
Oh, he a fan.
Have you had
said he wasn't
experiences or
much of a
encounters
UFO
since
Oh,
that?
I thought he said he was watching.
that's
So,
why he's excited. He's like,
And
I didn't even
so
think this is
have
real.
you formed any general conclusions about what you think you experienced then?
know about it.
Yes, I think what we experienced was, like I said, well beyond the material science and the capabilities that we had at the time, that we have currently, or that we're going to have in the next 10 to 20 years.
Very good. Mr. Grush, you've been able to answer in great detail on certain questions, and then other things you say you're not able to respond to. Can you just explain where you're drawing the line? What's the basis for that?
Yeah, based on my DOPSR security review and what they determined that is unclassified.
I see. So you're answering any questions
saying
that
they
just
got us
call
out
upon
here
your knowledge on
popping
unclassified
bottles, twerking.
questions, but anything
Meanwhile,
that relates to classified
world-changing events.
matters you're not commenting on
But,
in
you
this
know,
context.
people crazy.
In an
though,
open
right?
session, but happy to participate in a closed session at the right level, yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Graves, you said that there are dozens
I'm gonna send
of
this to Ice-T.
fellow pilots, military
Ice-T.
pilots. Are there also commercial pilots who've
If this is
encountered
possible.
the same
Oh, he'll
the same
figure it
kind of
out. He probably
sightings that you
knows. He probably
described
been
before?
cloned.
They are similar. Pilots,
Why the
commercial
hell
pilots
he
have,
did a Domo Genie
Oh,
when you see me?
oh,
No,
oh,
I-
oh.
be able to reach out and look for objects over
I don't know
wide
how I'm
swaths of
gonna
airspace.
download this,
And
so
so
I'm just
pilots are
recording it.
seeing, commercial pilots are seeing, they're typically closer, and the range of what they're seeing is pretty large.
Well, what is the most vivid, concrete sighting with the naked eye
Oh, I know.
of the objects that
literally
you
got a
described
bandana
before, the
do-rag.
cube-like objects?
Certainly, I think the most
Band
vivid
rag.
sighting of that would have been near midair that we had at the entrance to our working area. One of these
About to
objects
record it on my
was
tablet.
completely stationary at the exact entrance to our working area.
Send me the link to this.
Not only geographically, but
Okay.
also at altitude. So it was right where all the jets are going, essentially on the eastern seaboard. The two aircraft flew within about 50 feet of the object, and that was a very close visual sighting.
And you were in one of the aircraft?
I was not. I was there when the
It's
pilot
been
landed.
live for
he
a
canceled
day,
the mission
bro.
after, and I was
Since
there.
yesterday.
He was in the ready room with all his gear on, with his mouth open.
This is ongoing.
And I asked him what the problem was, and he said,
So
"You know,
this is
something
happening. This is like,
He said he was 50 feet away from it,
Yes, sir.
and his description of the object was consistent with
Insane.
the description you gave us before.
A dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere.
wow.
Inside of a clear sphere.
Yes.
Ezekiel's
with
wheel
no
type of stuff.
self-evident propulsion
Wow.
system.
No wings, no IR energy coming off of the vehicle, nothing tethering it to the ground. And that was primarily what we were experiencing out there.
I'm over time. Thank you very much for your service, and I yield back to Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Mr. Burchett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for all three of y'all. Starting with Mr. Grace, why did you come forward on this issue?
I came forward because I felt that my colleagues did not have a way to mitigate this safety threat, and I wanted to help them. I was trained as an aviation safety officer by the Navy, and it just felt right. I felt like I had to help the folks that were still flying and dealing with this.
Mr. Grush?
Purely a sense of duty. I first swore an oath when I was a cadet 18 years ago, and I still uphold that even out of uniform.
Commander?
I was pestered by a friend, and I asked why, and he said, "You're the one person that they can't discredit, and you'll add credibility to the New York Times article." And so after about 6 times, I said, "Okay."
Yeah. This town isn't made, unfortunately, by people like y'all. We thank y'all. And I do want to also thank the people in the audience and the people that are watching this that can't be all over the world that have kept this issue alive. And their criticism and derogatory remarks, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So God bless y'all. Thank y'all so much. We really appreciate you guys and gals. That's why we need term limits. Y'all keep clapping, us politicians just keep talking. So, let me ask y'all, how can the public contribute to UAP reporting, and what avenues you think are available to the public to report these sightings?
Well, right now, I don't think there is a lot of public options for
we can
every man to
talk
be able
because
to
it's
report
recorded
on
on this.
I think even for professionals that have sensor data that are seeing these on a regular basis, they're still hesitant to come forward. And so for the general public, I think encouraging the conversations that we're having today,
That one is,
looking for
we can
technology
just talk while
solutions
that
that
one's
can be
recorded.
distributed so that objective data can be gathered is the first place to go.
Mr. Rush?
I'll just touch on the whistleblower side of it. I do encourage, current and former military, intelligence community, and industry contractors to come forward in a legal way, either through the IC or DoD or whatever the cognizant IGs are, to lead, join me in this discussion.
Commander, and I guess I should say this for the record, my daddy was United States Marine Corps, 1st Marine Division, so yes sir, he was old school, him and Chesky Puller on Peleliu, so thank you, brother.
Wow.
Yes sir.
I was
I'm
on
not,
right now.
I'm not anything like my daddy, he was
I would have the
incredible.
door wide
Very
open, speaker
mediocre,
on
say
blast,
less.
like yeah, we here.
For me, I was an accident investigator, so the biggest thing that I learned, and I think that witnesses need to do is, one, don't try and make the fish bigger than it was. Stick to the facts, write it down, and don't speculate what you think it is because it will sway your decision. Just write the facts down, we can get all the facts together, and we can start to investigate and get a real honest story instead of, it was just.
Thank you, and I want to thank everybody, we made history today. Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Thank you much, Mr. Garcia.
Nico, I know now we're
said
going
we
to
made
get some
history
closing
Yeah,
remarks,
today.
so I just wanted to say a few things. First, to our witnesses, I want to thank all of you for being here with us today. I know that it takes a lot of courage. You were telling really important information to this community, and I just want to thank you also for all three of you, your service to our country. I also want to just note that today's hearing was both important but also serious, and I want to thank our subcommittee chairman, Mr. Grothman, I think, for running a very fair and substantive hearing. I do want to thank the committee staff on both sides for the amount of work that it took to put this hearing in place. And certainly to all the members that have been involved in this issue prior to the hearing. I also want to note for our witnesses and for the public that I'm a freshman member of Congress and I've only been here for 7 months, but this is by far the most bipartisan conversation and discussion that I have seen happen in the Congress. And I think that a topic of this significance as it relates to our national security, as it relates to information that we're trying to gather for the American public, does bring people together, and I think that's really great.
Now that's a birthday to remember.
I think it's also important to note for the public, today in our hearing, we had on our side also both our full ranking member, which is Mr. Raskin, and our vice ranking member, which is Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, both here at our hearing. I think it shows the importance and seriousness that our side of the
Oh my
aisle is
God,
taking
AOC is there
this
too?
important hearing, but also the broader issue
I
as,
like
as
her.
it relates to working with our Republican counterparts.
The
on this
Spanish
committee.
girl that
I want to additionally
She's
add,
down
that I
with
think
Biden
and
and them.
encourage, I think it's really important that we have and continue these discussions and these hearings. Clearly, there's a lot of information that we don't know.
Don't lie, he's
But
playing
it's
God.
also very clear that we have to continue our investigation and accountability on asking the right questions and ensuring that they're part of the public record. One thing that was important today is some folks might wonder, why are we asking questions that might already be out there or that have been asked before? It's important that they're asked and put into the public record as it relates to this committee. And so I want to thank you for answering some questions multiple times, not just in maybe meetings you had with some members, but also here in the public. Let me also just add an additional note that it's important also that our friends in the media and those that are not just reporting on this hearing, but that have reported on this topic that may in the future. The media has an important role in this
Respecting
process.
your
It's very important
perspective,
that the
this
media
could also be
engages
that point
the
that you
independent
talked about,
investigation and reports
where
on
people
not
be
just
like
what happened
Christianity,
today, but what they
like
see
God and all that.
independently as what is
Then
happening.
you say there's
around
gonna be a
UAPs
point like that
in the broader
where
community.
people just shrug
That is
like,
also an important public benefit that we have in trying to get the information and the facts as it relates to this. Let me also just say finally that as a teacher and
If this
educator,
is a distraction,
a long-time teacher and researcher,
they gotta have
but
something
I also
great
really believe
Yeah.
in following facts, in doing your homework, and making sure that you follow science as we try to give the most information as possible. So I want to thank you all for agreeing to do that today. Transparency is the cornerstone of government. We live in a vast galaxy, a lot of unanswered questions, and thank you all for being here today. Mr. Chairman.
I mean, my hair's standing up.
Thank you. I'd like to one more time thank Mr. Burchin and Ms. Luna for bringing
I've been
this to our
training.
attention. It's a
I've been
topic that
training,
was
boy.
interest to me since I was in school. It was a very illuminating hearing. Obviously, I think several of us are going to look forward to getting some answers in a more confidential setting. I assume some legislation will come out of this. Sure.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I need to compliment the folks in my office that did a lot of the work on this. Rachel and Noah sitting behind me here. They're very quiet and humble, but without them, this thing would not have come off like it did, so I apologize.
Thank you. I think we're going to want to look into what we can do to make more of this information public. I think there's certainly a time period after which it should always be made public, and people have been concerned about these issues, like I said, since I was in high school. But in any event, I'd like to thank everybody who was here, sticking through the entire hearing. Without objection, the members will have 5 legislative days to submit materials and to submit additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses for their response. If there's no further business, without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.
Fact, out there, I met a fellow who came in there all the way from Denmark to be here for this meeting. So this is huge. This is worldwide. I think we suspect what's going on, but I'd also like to thank the members of Congress who supported our efforts to make this hearing happen. Some have even confided to me that they've had UFO sightings of their own. Those members, of course, some of them wish to remain anonymous, and I'll keep it that way. But also, finally, I'd like to thank these 3 brave witnesses here. They took an oath. They took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and dadgummit, they're doing it. And we owe them a debt of gratitude. Y'all quit clapping. You're cutting in on my time.
This could keep us stuck with Biden for a while.
These folks, they've got nothing to gain
That's
from
another
this.
thing.
And I think
So
you're going to
I
find
said
out that
AOC is
there are
in it.
quite a few slings and arrows. We need to remember them in our prayers and their families. And I'm thankful to them for their honest testimonies. They have done interviews and appeared in documentaries like Accidental Truth to get their stories out there. And now they are all here to testify under oath for Congress. It's been so difficult to get here today. I said, in the Baptist church, we'd say that the devil's in our way. And the devil's been in our way through this thing. And we've run into roadblocks from members, from the intelligence community, the Pentagon, our proposed legislation to go in the FAA reauthorization.
I know, they're
It just
staring
says,
at him, bro.
If an airline pilot
It's like, come on, don't film
has
that
a
out
sighting,
that
that when he makes that report to the FAA, that it would come to Congress. But I was told that the intelligence community did not like that, and the amendment was not even heard in committee. I think it's time for this country to take back our country. We need to tell the folks at the Pentagon, they work for us. Goddammit, we don't work for them. And that's exactly the point. This is an issue of government transparency. You can't trust a government that does not trust its people. We're not bringing little greedy enterprise off the hearing. Sorry to disappoint about half of y'all. We're just going to get to the facts. We're going to uncover the cover-up, and I hope this is just the beginning of many more hearings and more people coming forward about this. And I yield back the remainder of my time. I think to Representative Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we'll call him.
He said we cannot trust a government that doesn't trust.
The circumstances surrounding UAPs has captivated the attention of the American people for decades, ingrained in even the minds of our nation's leaders from Jimmy Carter to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump, Marco Rubio to Chuck Schumer, John Radcliffe to National Security Council officials. Yet from Roswell, New Mexico to the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, the sightings of UAPs have rarely been explained by the people who have first-hand accounts of these situations. This is largely due to the lack of transparency by our own government and the failure of our elected leaders to make good on their promises to release explanations and footage and mountains of overclassified documents that
My
continue
hairs
to
are
be
standing
hidden from
up.
the American people.
We're like,
This isn't just how I feel. In fact, the American people largely believe that the government has actively covered up the truth about UAPs. One poll in particular found that 68% of Americans believe that the government is hiding information about UAPs and not being honest about what we know about them. And from my personal experience, I believe the same thing. Another poll found that nearly half Americans believe that the federal government is doing a very bad or somewhat bad job of dealing with reports of UFO sightings. As Representative Burchett just referenced on the FAA bill that just went through, you can tell that that's exactly happening. Considering the thousands of testimonies and videos taken on people's phones and eyewitnesses accounts made by credible witnesses such as doctors, pilots, scientists, and active duty service members, it is unacceptable to continue to gaslight Americans into thinking that this is not happening or that the potential of intelligent life forms exists other than humans. Even more alarming is the fact that these eyewitnesses are many times service members and have no assurance that their lives will not be negatively impacted or even harmed by their experiences. In being an active duty service member working on an airfield, I've had conversations with many pilots where they were in fear of coming forward
I don't know what kind of conversation
retribution
you
or
had with the
being
Lord,
taken off flight
but I
status.
know I had a serious.
How do we know this? Because the government has said
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
since
Oh,
service
bro.
members. They have also done nothing to calm the concerns of over 20% of Americans who have reported to have seen UFOs or UAPs. We are simply told not to question the government and that the government has it
I
under
wrestle,
control.
bro. I wrestle.
Today is the first hearing of its kind where we will attempt to get down to the bottom of what is actually happening with UAPs. But we will hear from people who have had personal sightings rather than Pentagon bureaucrats who have always been sent to stonewall our investigations. Just so that the press knows and the people know, we were even denied access to a classified briefing in a skiff prior to this hearing due to the amount of hoops that we had to jump through to grant temporary clearance to witness Rush, who has knowledge of classified information. It is time to have an open-minded discussion on this topic, to hear the evidence and understand the magnitude of what this means, not just for our nation, but for humanity. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank you, Mr. Burchett, for bringing this topic to my attention.
Bye-bye, Great Reset.
Now we'll recognize National Security Subcommittee Ranking Member Garcia.
Well, you know.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank first our witnesses for joining us today.
You know I'm waiting
I
on
want
the
to
rapture,
begin by
bro.
thanking you all for your
So
service
when
to
that
our country,
happens,
and for sharing your voices.
Oh, yeah, they're gonna
today.
say
have the
aliens
great
did it.
deception
As well.
They say they're gonna
To
say
Mr.
aliens
Graves,
did it.
Yeah.
Grateful for you to spend some
Yeah, I
time.
forgot about that
we
one.
had for you to share with candor some of your experiences, so I appreciate that.
but if it's not,
I do
and
want to
we've been
thank all the
invaded
members
a
of
long
our
time
subcommittee
ago,
today,
we
and
gotta
also
be
those
prepared
that
for
are here.
anything.
I always felt we've been
incredible
invaded. I mean,
interest
we
in this
literally
issue.
just talked.
Particularly to Congressman Burchett, I know that
Bro, I
your
mean,
leadership
literally, my whole
gotta
faith
hit
is
up.
on
brought
the
it to this place today,
invasion.
and I want to thank you
He was just
for
talking
that,
about
as well as
this.
everyone else
Just
that's been
talking about it.
engaged in this
You heard
work.
me though?
I also want to thank
Literally,
you
my
for
whole
that.
faith
I
is
know
about
I've
an
worked very
invasion,
hard
and
to
what I
ensure,
saw.
that
Yeah,
today's
you just
hearing
saw
is
freaking
serious, that it's transparent.
a reptile,
I know,
basically.
I know.
Appropriate answers as our
Right.
oversight body always demands. Now, it's really important that we're here in a bipartisan way. to have this conversation, which really, to the heart of it, is about national security and key to the subcommittee's core purpose. This is the subcommittee on national security of the Undersecretary. Now, our witnesses will testify today that UAPs have posed a serious safety threat, and we must understand this. More broadly, we're dealing with real questions that get to the heart of our faith in government. Faith in our institutions, as we all know, is at an all-time low. Partisanship and alternative facts make it too easy to doubt narrative or our institutions. But this hearing will offer the public unique perspectives, building on years of reporting by both federal agencies and the independent media. Now, some of the earliest reporting on this issue was a groundbreaking 2017 New York Times report, which revealed research as we know now on unidentified anomalous phenomena.
The class that I was in, they said it 5 years before
Mr. Gray's
come back to supposedly is what the
also been
Bible
documented by the
study is
public,
teaching.
not just by the New York Times,
2 more years
CNN,
because
and many other national news outlets.
the next solar eclipse.
Now, the Office of the
the
Director
last
of
solar
National
eclipse went
Intelligence has
this way.
published public reports documenting
The next one's gonna go that
and
way.
on June
There's gonna
9,
be a big
2022,
X on
NASA
America.
announced that the agency is commissioning a
2025.
study to, of course, examine unidentified anomalous phenomena. Now, the sheer number of reports, whistleblowers, and
then
stories of
according to
unidentified
the Thang
anomalous phenomena
Yeah.
should raise real questions and warrant investigation and
Has
oversight.
already been.
And that's why we are here today.
It's got something to
Pilots
do
have
with
reported
that.
encounters for years. But
Nigga,
because of the
X-Files.
stigma around reporting these incidents, we
Harvest,
still
bro.
don't have a
X-Files,
complete picture
bro.
of actually
Yeah.
what's going on.
The last
Particularly
last
as our
season,
witnesses
I know
will
what you're
testify
talking about.
on the
Remember,
civilian side.
inoculate
That is
everybody, this and that,
And
blah
put the
blah blah.
DNA.
This
Now,
is
it's very
actually
important that we show
yo,
that
we
Democrats and
literally are
Republicans
living in a
We're in a
movie,
movie.
bro.
can come together.
We've been in a movie since 9/11.
To cut through misinformation and to look at the
Always
facts in
felt
a
that.
serious and thoughtful manner. If we are to advance oversight and public disclosure, we must also gain the broad support of the public. We will succeed getting facts out to the public faster if there is a broad public support as part of the process. Now, I understand fully the Department of Defense
Damn, I wish
is
Robert
hesitant to
was
share information
being
that
elected
could also
right now,
undermine our
man.
national security by revealing information.
I don't
They're
want-
probably gonna try to get him up there, bro.
Yeah, I don't want Biden to be dealing with this.
At
Nah.
the same time, many people believe that we're withholding
Robert
information
F.
from them, and that is dangerous.
Conspiracy, here we
I
I like
go.
the fact there's a lot of Latinos up on Congress now, though. That's
And I
what's
want to
up,
trust
man.
that the American people will be able to weigh
Garcia,
evidence
Luna,
and make
Cortez, you know, like you
Now, we
hearing.
have incidents where sensors, sometimes even multiple
Our
types of
names
sensors,
and
detect
stuff,
things that
man.
we cannot explain. UAPs, whatever they may be, may pose a serious threat to
Well,
our military
who
or civilian aircraft.
Africa and
that must be
Latin
understood.
America deals with these things.
Now,
the
my
most.
career and training as a longtime and career educator and
Say it
teacher and researcher tell me that we should
Africa
never rule
and Latin
anything
America
out.
deals with these stuff
We
the
know that
most,
our
especially
space,
like
of course, is
Mexico and
vast
stuff.
and
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
I also want to note that Mr. Sean Kirkpatrick,
Places
the
with
director of the All-Domain
pyramids
Anomaly
and-
Resolution Office,
Oh
the
my
component
gosh,
of the
the
DoD
pyramids.
office that investigates UAP data, has testified before the Senate this
Yeah,
year
exactly.
that his unit has found no evidence of extraterrestrial activity. NASA has also stated they don't have evidence of extraterrestrial life either. And we've heard this, of course, from some of our
Oh, yeah, it's
agencies.
time.
And we should remind viewers and witnesses, which I think is really important,
Get
that we
on
also
some
cannot
chat.
share classified information in public settings. But questions, of course, remain that people want to see data and information for themselves. The enormous interest in the hearing today underscores the importance of a fair and open look at the evidence from witnesses who can share their unique perspectives. Now, I know I certainly have a lot of questions, and I know that all the members
Yo, I
watching
feel
will
like
do
I'm
as
in
well.
freaking
We should come to this hearing with an open
Independence
mind
Day.
and do not let our
Sis is gonna
existing
love
ideas
this.
restrict
Yeah.
us on either side. I hear over and over from many agencies.
What
the
I said
stigma
yesterday
around
when we was
reporting and
watching
investigating
Tyrone,
UAPs
it can happen if we have
prevents us from
a
getting
common
real
enemy.
answers. We know that whistleblowers have reported harassment, intimidation, or stigma as
Unity.
well, and this is not acceptable. If people can't report incidents which would have national security or safety implications, then that also has serious consequences for us. As ranking member of this subcommittee,
Man, that
I know
means
it's
I
my,
might have
I know my
to
job will be
freaking say
completely
what I
impossible
saw, bro,
if
because
whistleblowers or
You
others
have
feel
to.
intimidated to come before this committee. We can't be afraid of asking questions, and we can't be afraid
And
of
I'm a
the truth.
witness that you said it
I'm proud
before
of this, that this hearing builds upon bipartisan work by
Put that
members of
on
the
video
House
right
and
now.
Senate dating many years back, which sought to increase
With
awareness
this
within the Department of Defense
too.
and to mandate more of
Mention
Congress
alien
of
activity.
UAPs.
Or
You know, the
extra
Senate is taking up an
dimensional
amendment to the
activity.
defense
And then the
authorization.
lady,
Before this
that
occurred.
mother effer is not real. Like, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh,
It's still playing here. It's
Alright,
still
cool.
playing here. Actually, I can put the volume.
oh, this is crazy. It must be ended.
not less, on UAPs, the more we understand.
Just go back and
The
then.
Defense Authorization Bill, which will create a commission with broad declassification authority, and we can should all agree that that is an important step. Members of both parties and senior officials in multiple administrations have taken an interest in this issue, and we're proud to carry and build that confidence in the American people. This hearing will also not be the end of this discussion, but a new chapter and start to years and years of work that many folks both in the public and within government have worked on.
Said it.
We should encourage more reporting,
Said it.
not
Said
less,
COVID
on UAPs,
was
the more they
shaking,
understand
like,
the safer.
now you could deal with anything.
We will hear testimony from witnesses today
world
with a
just
long
got
record of
shook.
service to the American people and with subject matter expertise. Our witnesses have a unique opportunity to share their perspective, insights, and their experiences with the American people. And I encourage all of my colleagues to engage with these difficult questions with an open mind and to follow the facts on behalf
They could
of
literally be fourth dimensional
and
beings
also
right
just
now
want
in
to
Right
there.
there. Especially that guy.
That guy, he keeps
Oh.
looking at me, bro.
Everything is
Like,
on
bro,
the
why
table
you keep
to
looking at me? Look, now he's
to
turning around.
Yeah.
I want to yield the 2.5 minutes, the remainder of my time, to the representative from Florida, Representative Moscovich.
I could
for an
predict the
opening
future.
statement.
Guy
He
in
also
blue
has
suit
been
is about to
very
speak
much
next.
engaged in this issue, and I want to thank him for his leadership.
He's like,
Congressman.
cool
Thank you,
Napoleon
Member
Dynamite.
Garcia. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Tim Burchett and
Dynamo-
for their leadership in pushing this hearing forward.
There you
I
go.
want to
Guy
thank
in-
obviously
guy in
committee
blue
staff
suit.
and their staff working on this on a
Yeah,
bipartisan
predicted the
basis.
future.
Because many Americans are deeply interested in this issue, and it shouldn't take the potential of non-human origin to bring us together.
Ooh.
Additionally, I want to thank the witnesses for coming forward to share your perspectives, your thoughts,
This is deep.
and the sightings of UAPs. Unlike other hearings, many times in Congress,
I can't wait to
you're
see
not here to
social
help a
media.
political party, but you're here to share information with the American people.
Oh, my.
And it's not something that is just going on in this administration, it's something that's spanned many administrations. For decades, many Americans have been fascinated by objects mysterious and unexplained.
Reagan
and it's
even
long
said
past
it.
time that they
What
got
it's gonna
some
take for the
answers.
world to come
The
together as
American
we
public
have
has a
something
right
else
to learn about
to fight
technologies
against.
of unknown origins, non-human
gosh,
intelligence,
Bush.
and unexplainable phenomena.
But this
Those
is
are
the
not
bad
the
part
words
with
of
my
a
faith.
UFO Twitter account. Though that is a
Because they
direct
could use
quote
this to target
from Majority Leader
anything
Chuck
that's ever been
The
said.
American public has a
about
right to
other
learn about
things.
technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable
You
phenomena.
talking about
In an interview with
cavemen
Fox
and all that,
News,
they could be
recent
like,
former director
all
of
these
National
ancient
Intelligence John
writings and
Radcliffe
stuff.
confirmed
They got something to
that
do
the U.S.
with
government
this,
is
yeah,
aware
like-
a lot more sightings of UAPs, and that they have not made that information public. I quote, "There are a lot more sightings that have not been made public," Radcliffe said. For me, this hearing is about transparency. We unfortunately live in a time in which many people distrust government and our institutions, and overclassification of information away from the American public or even Congress contributes to today's politics. The American people have regular questions. What are UAPs? How come the media doesn't report more on them? Are they foreign adversaries? Are they U.S. technology? Are they something else? They ask themselves, how come when a Russian jet shoots flares at one of our drones, we have perfect pictures and videos to show the American people and the world? But when it comes to UAPs, nothing. Of course, we must always protect our national security to maintain our superiority, like when stealth helicopters were only rumored to exist, but were used in the Osama bin Laden raid in 2011. But we can't allow that to be used as a shield to keep the American people completely in the dark from basic truths. The American people deserve to hear more about special access programs. Congress has a right to know if there's any unsanctioned weapons development. Satellite imagery that has not been provided to Congress. Congress created the All-Domain Resolution Office in the NDAA of 2022. In its initial analysis, there are 171 uncharacterized UAP reports, and this is the words from the report, that appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. I believe more information is known about the 171 instances. It's time for Congress to reinsert ourselves. I call on our military leaders and intelligence officials to release more information to the American people about UAPs. And to our military leaders, if there's nothing to conceal, let Congress go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the Dugway Proving Ground, or even Groom Lake in Nevada. We should have disclosure today, we should have disclosure tomorrow,
The time has come. Thank you, Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. Moskowitz, and I will yield back now to our chairman. Thank you.
Right, now I'd like to introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is Lieutenant Ryan Graves. He's the Executive Director of Americans for Safe Aerospace. Lieutenant Graves is also a former U.S. Navy F-18 pilot with his own UAP experience. The next witness, David Grush, is a former Senior Intelligence Officer with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and was a Senior Technical Advisor for UAP issues. And finally, retired Navy Commander David Fravor, squadron leader who worked as a naval aviator for 18 years. Mr. Fravor has his own UAP experience, known as the TikTok event. I look forward to hearing from all three of you today. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hands. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Let the record show that all the witnesses answered in the affirmative. You may be seated. We appreciate you all being here today and look forward to your testimony. We remind the witnesses that we have read your written statements and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please try to limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it's on, as members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, it will turn yellow. And the red light, when that comes on, does your 5 minutes.
You did not just use that.
I'll now recognize Mr. Graves for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you.
Irony.
Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Garcia, distinguished members of the House Oversight Subcommittee on National Security, Representative Burchett and Luna. My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, including 2 deployments in Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Inherent Resolve. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers,